Hello everyone, it's Emily again. Welcome to my YouTube channel. If you are stumbling upon this, great. If you're one of my subscribers, thank you so much. I just started it this week. It's still in the early stages, so I just want to thank you. I'm coming here with my crooked glasses and I'm trying to look like Ariana Grande. I'm just kidding, because I was like, how should I wear this sweater? And then I thought, frumpy, and I thought, oh, that's what Ariana would do. Or is it Ariana? Anyways, whatever. So today's topic is about the starving artist and the side hustle. Actually, I should say the starving artist and the side hustle, right? Because these are two common phrases we hear a lot. Also, my glasses are really crooked, so I think I'm gonna stop doing that. And the glare. So, again, these videos, for the first several videos I'm going to be putting out, are just freeform videos. They're going to be longer, in-depth conversations on these topics, and then later on as I go, I'm going to start probably editing in words or captions and kind of more specific edits, like a very official structure. But for now, it's just an open dialogue. Feel free to write to me. If you know me, let's chat about these things. I want to keep it going. So, here we go. Freeform thoughts. First, the starving artist. That's a common phrase we hear. Even I have a loved family member, I won't say who still kind of uses that term in an endearing way to try to be understanding when times have been hard for me. But I realized that's still a mentality and a thought going around. And even if people don't mean harm by it, it's also a mentality that I think a lot of artists still have, of this idea of lack. We're lacking. We don't have enough. This is something I'm, especially going into 2022, I've been struggling with changes in my life circumstances. And also knowing that there's ebbs and flows in one's career. There's times like pre-pandemic where every single year I've been working, I've been building more and more reputation, credibility, and income within my field. So before the pandemic, I was looking at my taxes being, oh, I was excited. I was like, okay, every year I've been making more money in my field and doing less side hustles, which is my goal, to be working full-time, supported in the arts. Then I was kind of starting to do that, work full-time in the arts before the pandemic, but it was still hard. It still wasn't really working for me financially. Then pandemic happened, so much change. That's another video, another story. Then we're still in the pandemic, but when I say after, I'm referring to post-lockdown times, and specifically 2021. I basically, the last several months, the last half of the year, from mid-June until now, I went back to trying to work full-time only in my field, which whether it be teaching and performing or doing little side things like doing extra work or things like that. It's all within the areas of arts and entertainment and arts education. And I have to tell you, these things still come with their challenges. It's definitely not easy. And there are moments of unpredictability. And I think we all see that a lot, especially when you're performing, because if you're performing and you're lucky enough or prepared enough, talented enough, have all the right pieces together to be on a good contract, maybe you're set. But something we don't talk about enough is, are you going to have to give up another job you have in order to take the contract for a limited amount of time? And then will that job be there for you when you come back? Or are you going to have to start over again? What is going to be your safety net when you're doing that contract and say you are not able to line up a job for when you come back? So there's a lot of moments like that where it can be great and you can feel like you're on top of the world in this field, and then moments where it's a little scary and you're wondering what's next. And obviously, that's where I go into side hustle. So I'm probably going to be going back and forth between starving artist and side hustle because they're linked. So this idea of a side hustle, if you haven't heard about it, I mean, people use it in other industries too, and other, I guess it's probably common in like millennial and Gen Z lingo. But this idea of a side hustle is it's not like your passion, your main passion, or what you set out to do in your career, but it's more something that you do on the side of your main priority to supplement your income, or maybe for some people it's something else they're passionate about too. I don't want to put like a label on it, but those are interesting too, because in a field where you're dealing with working different contracts or for different company or different companies or gigs, there's always that high and low, right? There's the ebb and flow where there's times where more things are happening and maybe things are slow, or things are slow for one area you work with and high for another area. And I'm very happy when that happens to me, because that means, great, I have my fingers dipped in enough pools, my feet dipped in enough pools, however the saying is, where I can say I'm working with one thing and then that slows down, I can jump in to another company's work or things like that. It's the ideal, because these things come and go. But what I've learned over time is, unless you're in working in a maybe like a Broadway show or a cruise contract, or maybe like a company that has a season where they're performing at the Joyce, or you're working, something like that. That would be a good example. Like season, city center, and different things. I'm not making a lot of sense right now. If you're not in scenarios like that, if you're working in the tier of freelancer and small company land, as a dancer, and I can speak a little bit as an actor in that area, you can't depend on these things for your full time. It just doesn't happen. I have something on my eye. So that being said, that's when, okay, you have to ask yourself, what's my side hustle gonna be? And let me tell you, there are so many approaches. There's so many creative ways people in the arts are making money, from like temp jobs to customer service, restaurant jobs, I don't know, trading. I'm trying to think of things that are not just within the field as the side hustle of like teaching, choreographing, whatever. But yeah, we already know that term. You see it in TV shows or movies where it's like the struggling actor and they're working in the restaurant or whatever, right? So obviously we know there's so many different side jobs that people do for different industries, like food service industry or things like that, who are maybe students or artists. Yeah. I personally have found it very challenging over the years to find like the perfect side hustle for me. Even doing YouTube right now is something I'm doing in my spare time to see what happens and to see if this is something in the long term that I could make a living off of. But because we see that YouTubers are like YouTubers, influencers, TikTokers, like it becomes a whole other line of work for people. And I'm sure it comes with its own challenges. But I've never found a side hustle that I thought was like the best thing to ever happen. I will tell you right now, as far as satisfaction in what I do, all my side hustles that are all teaching related, they bring me joy and satisfaction. And that took a long time to get there. It's been like 5.5 years now. There's dust in the air. So that took me time, and it still comes with me actually having to do training at home on my own time, and studying, like watching, learning, studying, preparing, because I'm being trained now in new areas of teaching, that I wasn't like previously trained in, but it's totally fun. Like, it's teaching me new skills. It's making me think about business and customer service and like things that I don't always think about, but as someone with an entrepreneurial spirit, it's kind of good for me because it teaches me about people and how to work with people. So that being said, even there in my current side hustles, which I won't go into the specifics, who and what I do work for, they're not always like the most reliable, especially during a pandemic time where things are affected by maybe school systems or people wanting to be in person right now with the surge. But I can tell you, as far as like the joy and peace of mind I have, it's a lot more at ease as someone who is more anxiety prone. It's very important to me to have any kind of work I do and to be places where I like who I work for. Who I work for doesn't give me stress or anxiety in ways where they're overly demanding or they're inflexible or they're when I say overly demanding, like consuming my life or my time. That's really important to me because it's the point of being a side hustle, right? Is for you not to pour your life into it, but to have time and energy and flexibility in that job so you have time to do the thing you love, which in my case is performing. So, now I'll tell you about my past side hustles and insight into that for anyone who is maybe fresh to your career or maybe to New York and you're looking for other ways to work that can give you flexibility to still pursue your art. So these are just the ones I've done in the last 5.5 years that have come with their hits and misses, I guess. My first one was I was a fitness at a small boutique fitness studio that I was doing reception for, and I really wanted to be an instructor there, but I'm glad that didn't happen because it wasn't the right fit for me. I barely could sleep because sometimes I'd be working like in the afternoon into the evening, like the shifts were from 4 to 9 p.m. or from like 5 a.m. to 11 a.m. or 12 p.m. or so, I think. But I would be waking up at like 4 a.m., 4:30, and I would be on the train with people that were a little sketchy in the sense like I didn't really feel the safest in those hours, commuting in the dark, but in the early hours of the morning where things are still residual from the night before. It didn't always work well with my schedule when I needed to, like say I had a rehearsal and that was during a normal time, like an evening time, 7 to 9 or something like that. Well, if that morning I got up early, I would be so sleepy that I would have to go home to like reset my energy and sleep. And then I lost most of the day because I lost the afternoon hours, say to take class or something, and then I would just have energy to go to rehearsal. That's just me. Some people would be doing it. They would, like some of the teachers there, they were also performers. They would be like teaching and then go to class and go to auditions, and power to them. But I'm someone who needs sleep. I think everyone needs sleep. And the inconsistency of sometimes needing to be up later at night, sometimes needing to be up early in the morning, it really didn't support my career. And on top of that, that was a minimum wage side hustle. If I was working as an instructor, you would only have to teach that time I had calculated. If I had taught like 10 hours of fitness classes a week, which is only like 2 days a week, like 2 shifts, because some days you could teach up to 5 hours, maybe 4 or 5 hours. And when you're teaching, you're not always doing the fitness. You might be demoing the exercise, but you're not really working out the whole time. You kind of work out separate. That would have like covered most of my expenses, that one job. But if you're doing a receptionist job, that can not pay your bills in New York City. I don't know who pays their bills off of that. but it was not doing it for me. So that's one side hustle that I've seen some people do. I'm not a big fan of it. Reason being, I don't like difficult clients, people who are in kind of well off, well-to-do, and are privileged and entitled, and they don't treat people in customer service with the same kind of respect as they would like an instructor. And even for the instructors, things were difficult. Unfortunately, living in New York City, you run the gamut. You can meet the most incredible people, and you can also meet people that are very privileged and maybe not always as aware of their privilege, and they're not going to treat you very well. If they are aware, maybe they just don't care because they're entitled. So, that was an X for me. Another side hustle I've done is I've done like light catering with the staffing company. I had a negative experience where one of the guys working with me was inappropriate with how he was just approaching me and talking to me, and it wasn't anything that crossed the line in my opinion, but I did have to review about him. I did report like his behaviors in one of the reviews, and I got a call from the boss saying, hey, this guy, I'm putting all this pressure on myself to make this video short, but someone might watch the whole thing, so I'm going there. The boss said, actually, thank you for reporting that. You should never not feel bad about it. He was lovely. But he said, actually, this guy was already on probation for the way he had been acting with other women. So, and then he got fired. And I said in my review, please, I'm not trying to fire him, but this is what happened, you know. I learned from that lesson to address those things head on in the future when I'm working in the workplace with men who might act a certain way. And but through that experience, I'm glad I did what I did, because clearly there were other reports, so maybe worse things had happened, who knows. So that wasn't for me. I couldn't do the sessions enough. It was long hours. I would want to eat all this food that wasn't good for me. Like, it was a lot of time on your feet, and anyways, I just don't think it was the right fit. So that was one example, but I will say I do know a lot of actors who do staffing, catering kind of things, and a dancer, I know, and it has given them that flexibility they needed to go on auditions. Mind you, when you go on an acting audition versus a dance audition, very different time requirements are needed for that. Whereas, like for me, when I'm going on an in-person dance audition, I have to be prepared to kind of like block the whole day off for that, because there's a lot of hours of waiting and getting called back, and you don't know if you're going to get cut or not. It's another story. So there's staffing, bartending. Another one I did was hostessing. I walked into different restaurants, and then I got one on the spot at this Italian restaurant across from Lincoln Center. And I had some good perks of that, but I like being with people. I like being friendly with people. And greeting people. I was on my college welcome squad, so in a way I do like that. I didn't like being on my feet for hours and hours, because even though it's not seemingly physical, it's not great on your body to be on your feet so much. Same for people doing wait staff work, and you still meet difficult, entitled people when you work in these like higher end restaurants, and even then they'll be like really cheap too, with coat check, with tipping, and then occasionally you'll have someone who is very generous. But ultimately you're making minimum wage for being on your feet for hours in a day, and then also dealing with creepy people, creepy men you're working with. Maybe that's just been my experience. I don't know. I think a lot of women can agree, unfortunately. But in that job as well, I had an instance that I felt was inappropriate, and I addressed it right in the moment, and then it never happened again. If my parents are watching this, or family, just know nothing crazy happened. I would tell you if something really bad happened, and I'm lucky nothing really bad has happened. But, you know, I'm grown, and I can handle myself in those situations. But unfortunately, that's the reality of the workforce and being in a city with so many different types of people. So that job wasn't the worst or anything, but it really wasn't for me. I'm glad I did it the time I did, and I'm glad I got out of it when I did. Also, to let everyone know, I've never been fired from a job. I'm an Aquarius, I'll blame it on that, and I love change and new things, and when something's great, I stick around, I'm very loyal, but when things are just not serving my ultimate long-term or like big goals, I will move forward, and I think that's the nature of side hustles. I think people who hire you for these side hustles have to know, hey, this isn't forever, this is a short-term thing. And usually I'm very transparent about my priorities with whoever I work for, even in a side hustle. So there's one. I did mild cafe, barista, cocktail serving at like a media studio and a concert venue, art place. That was actually a lot of fun, but it ended up kind of shutting down. Business wasn't good there. And it was pretty far from me. Still kind of, occasionally it would pay well with special events, but in the other cases, you know, you're barely making even tips from working in the cafe. But I'm glad I learned that skill. I'm glad I learned something new. Same thing at a bar, wristband check-in, you know, me being this 4'11" woman trying to like keep all these Upper East Side wealthy people out of a certain area in the bar was not a good combo. Like, people weren't listening to me, they were really drunk, they were obnoxious. Really wasn't the best fit for me, but hey, I'm grateful for everybody I've worked for, anyone who gave me a chance to work and help try to support myself. Another side hustle, and that one I did like waitressing like one time there at the bar, and it wasn't even busy, and it stressed me out, so I was like, it's not for me. Another side hustle, yeah, I'm taking you on the whole journey. This is gonna be a long one. I did the Shape Up NYC program, and that actually wasn't, it was a volunteer program where you got trained in group fitness through Shape Up NYC in New York City parks for 12 weeks. I would go to Brooklyn for several hours on every Saturday for 12 weeks, and I lived in the Heights. It was definitely a commute, but I got in, and I got the training. I met awesome people, and I was doing the classes up in Harlem, but just the demand was not there. But that gave me fitness experience, which later led me, because I had a personal trainer certification, it helped me do some group fitness classes at a gym. That was fun. That was a good gig. I recommend, if you can teach group fitness, like, do it. If it's the kind that you don't even have to be jumping around the whole time, but if it gets you moving, it's another way to cross train, but it also pays well for your time. And if you're at the right place, it will, you'll have good people and good clients. So I was lucky I didn't have difficult people. It was small classes, and yeah, I liked it. It was a shame that the gym had to close down. But so I recommend that one. I did subbing at like these private residential gyms in the Upper West Side, thanks to one of my friends, Jackie, and also private in-home personal training to a couple on the Upper East Side. And all of those were so enjoyable for me. I couldn't commit to those things consistently. I wasn't able to get like a job full-time at the residential gyms, like a regular job there. But ultimately, I do recommend situations like that, because if you meet the right people who are your clients, it will serve you well, because you will be paid well for your time and your effort, and you'll build relationships with people and get to know people. And if you're a people person, like me, it's an enjoyable job. Occasionally, maybe you'll meet some difficult people in scenarios like that, but if it's the right fit, I think it will pay off. So ultimately, I worked at a Pilates studio trying to teach my own classes there. That was hard to build a following there, so the ultimatum was kind of like either get more students and build more classes, or no classes at all, so I just stepped away. But ultimately, it was still a great experience, and I was very grateful to the people that opened the door for me to even get my foot into fitness through that studio. So I share all of that, my journey with the fitness realm, is that the fitness jobs that you can do, where you're guaranteed your clients, or you can secure packages and people can't cancel on you, or where you can sub in even. I find that those are really fun and helpful jobs if you like fitness and moving, which I like those things. So, I'm taking you on the whole list today. Maybe I'll make a shorter video next time. What's another side hustle? I feel like I've done it all. I've done babysitting. I'm not really into babysitting. I've always been kind of stubborn with that one, just because, especially now with sickness going around, I just personally, I rather hang out with the kids and be their friend than have to discipline them. And with babysitting, these kids aren't always going to listen to you very well. Every family's different, but for me, it always leaves me feeling like drained most of the time. And I don't like having jobs where at the end of the day, I want to be in a job that gives me more energy rather than jobs that depletes me. So that is something I haven't done in a long time, but if I needed to, I do say babysitting work has been a big part of the bread and butter for like a lot of people in the dance community that I know about, just because it is reliable and it's super needed here, whether it's after watching kids for a few hours in the afternoon or full-time nannying. I'm sure there's a lot of perks to it, but again, for me, it wasn't a great fit, but it does work for some people, especially people who do enjoy being with kids and it gives them energy. And I've done rooftop gardening, which was a lot of fun, and I thought it paid pretty well, and I loved it, but alas, it was only seasonal, and I just wasn't needed anymore at some point. But I recommend that if you can find an odd job that can keep you outside or doing something different and refreshing, especially in a big city, do it. So yes, I'm the queen of having tried a ton of side hustles. I'm probably not even naming most of them. Now I'm going to get to the side hustles that I actually think work really well for being a performer, and that I find for the most part are pay you pretty well for your time and your energy, your effort, and that for the most part I find enjoyable and I think are great because they're related to your field. So I've spent many years working in after-school programs, and I enjoy that. I love it when I teach at studios or sub in, or can teach at an arts high school or do residencies or guest teaching anywhere. That's super great, working with different age groups. I currently also teach senior dance and fitness classes, a class once a week. I've been doing it for years, and except for the pandemic ended it, and now it's back, and now it's not back because of the surge, so that's on hold. But I recommend working with elderly groups if you can, if you like working with elderly, which I do, because they'll tell you like it is, but it doesn't take a lot of physical energy out of you if you need to conserve that for your dancing, your rehearsals, auditioning, and classes. So I highly recommend doing that. If you work in after-school programs, personally for me, I've veered away from it, doing it a little less than I used to, but I recommend that if it's a class you like and a good group of students, which most of the time there are pretty good students, and you're able to impart some kind of skill that you have, or have co-teachers. One thing I do like about after-school programs is most of the time you have co-teachers, you're not on your own. I will tell you, a lot of times in my experience, after school feels like glorified babysitting. So why I find it better than babysitting is because you're actually teaching values and skills to students, and some of your kids will be talented and interested in the work and some won't. But I recommend it if it's that you want something to do and you feel like you're using your knowledge and your expertise to some degree. It keeps you on your toes. One little side hustle that kind of fell into my life was doing supervision, like being like a class monitor, recess duty, things like that with a private school system. If you can work within a private school, I would say it pays incredibly well, but there are a lot of issues within the school system, at least in New York City, maybe in Jersey, that I've noticed. When you work within systems or in roles where people do not want to hire artists and they can't deal with flexibility or subbing in, even if you communicate in advance or you ask off in advance, those kinds of jobs, sometimes they really do need people who can be there like all the time. So if you know that you're going to be out auditioning, or you know that an opportunity is going to come up and you can't switch things out, I don't recommend getting too immersed within the system or the school, because I learned that the hard way, that the school really wants someone who's like can really be there, and you would have to sacrifice at some point. Are you going to audition? Are you going to go to set? Are you going to go to rehearsal? Or are you going to work at the school? So that was my experience. It's just different. I won't even go into other details there. I'm getting the shade. Now currently, outside of the seniors, I work at a boutique dance studio that does wedding dances and social and ballroom dances for couples. I only started a few months ago, and I really, really love it. It's been like one of my favorite, probably my favorite side hustle to date, even though I do love teaching fitness classes sometimes. It's been one of my favorites because you meet couples, and I'm a sucker for romance and people falling in love and meeting different types of people and personalities. Of course, you're gonna meet all kinds of people in a job like that. So some personalities maybe you'll know really well how to work with, and sometimes you'll have to adapt. But ultimately, it's teaching me new skills. I'm learning new areas and styles of dance. I'm learning how to communicate more effectively, and also just the business side of what it's like working in a studio and that aspect. So I personally recommend, if you could work within a studio environment. I think studios are great. Mind you, I've been seeing a lot of studios have had to struggle or close down during the pandemic. I'm not referring to ones I work for, but things I've seen happen in my circles. Whether it's like, because there's all kinds of studios. There's competition studios, more recreational studios, adult dance studios. I personally love working within the studio environment, subbing in, guest teaching, being a main teacher. I sub at a studio. I do heels classes there, and I love that. Like, any chance I get, I'm there. So, and I know I'm veering. One more topic. If you can work teaching classes for corporate situations, that's where it's at. Why? Because you're not going to expend too much energy physically, because it's for beginner level dancers, or like not dancers, right? It's an environment where you're there to help people have fun and learn something new, so the pressure's a little off. So if you're someone like me who's a perfectionist, you get stressed out kind of easily because you hold yourself to a lot of high standards. Sometimes it's great having little jobs where you're like, no, the pressure's off, right? Which maybe that's sometimes being in an after school class, maybe sometimes it's being a sub, or sometimes it's, teaching corporate. I recommend things like that because if you are a professional dancer and you're gonna need to be in rehearsal for several hours, or you need to go to class, or you need to go to the audition, you're gonna need your body long term. So for me, what I'm learning is how can I work within my field without being at risk for causing myself more injury or being so exhausted that I can't give energy into performing, when performing is my number one. So that's just my scenario personally. I know a lot of dancers who are like teaching their fitness classes, or they're working in these studios back to back to back. But if you're a teacher that's invested in your teaching, and you're not being a lazy teacher, when you're working at a studio with kids or teens, you're going to need it to extend a lot of physical energy. Teaching takes a lot of physical, emotional energy out of you because you're pouring in to other people what you know. You're listening to them, receiving how they're processing information, and then trying to adapt. So personally, if you can find scenarios like some of the ones I mentioned that were my favorite ones, I recommend it because it's about how you extend your energy to preserve yourself in the long run. So that's my spiel on side hustles. And the last one was doing extra work or background work, motivational dancing. I've done things like that too. I think those end up, when they actually happen, they end up paying you pretty well for your time, or you get fed, or you get perks or tips. Those things are, I enjoy them. Unfortunately, those things are not, I found them to not be very reliable, so don't bank on them. So wow, I gave you like 5.5 years worth of my advice on side hustles based off of my experiences, the pros and cons, and what I learned through them. And the last thing, to sum it up in these last few minutes, is this idea of the starving artist. Just remember, personally, I don't know any artists that are actually starving. Yes, there are times where it has been challenging for different people. Maybe they don't want to admit to that. Like, I've known people who joked about, oh yeah, back in the days I lived in New York, I had to eat ramen and beans and rice. It's like, yeah, everyone's journey has been different. I'll do another video about financial aspects, but I think we need to stop calling people the starving artist. We need to stop having starving artist mentality, because whatever your deal is, even if you're struggling, there are a lot of resources out there. There are resources in New York especially. It's not perfect, it's still flawed. Our country still doesn't give us the funding we need to take care of us the way that we deserve in our field. And times are hard sometimes, especially during the pandemic. So I'm not negating the challenges, but I think the more we can stop perpetuating this myth, when there are a lot of artists out there who are successful and make things work, the better. So I say we eliminate that phrase and eliminate that mentality, because we don't want to get stuck in that mentality of lack, and we want to live in a mentality of abundance. So that's my 2 cents on these topics. I know this is a very long video, and if you skimmed it, bless you. And if you watch it to the end, you are truly a saint, and I hope something resonated with you. Thank you.